At the very edge of the Earth, where maps fade into a blank stretch of white, lies a continent that almost feels like it doesn't belong to our world. Antarctica, a landmass larger than Europe, yet buried beneath miles of ice, hides secrets that humanity has never truly seen. Centuries ago, when sailors first charted the world, they left a strange empty space at the far south, as if a land was waiting to be discovered or deliberately kept hidden. What makes Antarctica so unusual isn't just its harshness, but its uncanny silence. No nation claims it outright. No native people have ever lived there. Even in modern times, what's revealed about it always seems carefully selected, carefully controlled. Scientists, politicians, and even powerful religious figures have all set foot on this frozen land, yet rarely do they share everything they've seen. And strangely enough, a global treaty signed back in 1959 turned it into an untouchable zone, a place where rival nations, even in times of tension, chose silence. But why? What could make humanity, a species that fights over every inch of land and every drop of resource, agree to leave Antarctica outside the game of conquest? What lies sleeping beneath that cold, white ice that we're not allowed to touch? And why, in a world full of conflict and ambition, does this one place remain untouchable? Tonight, on our exploration, we're going to peel back those frozen layers. We'll trace old maps, revisit great expeditions, and dive into everything from the legend of Atlantis to Cold War secrets. From controversial satellite images to suppressed scientific reports, each layer of ice is more than geology. It's a piece of a larger puzzle, a hidden story of power and truth that humanity has never been ready to face. Before sailing ships ever touched the icy southern seas, Antarctica existed only in imagination. For centuries, people believed the Earth needed a massive southern land to balance the continents in the north. This wasn't just a bit of geography, it reflected an ancient worldview. The Earth had to be symmetrical, like a set of scales held by nature itself. They called this imagined place by a mysterious name, Terra Australis Incognita, the unknown southern land. The first traces of this idea can be found in the minds of the ancient Greeks. The philosopher Pythagoras once described the Earth as a sphere, and to explain why it didn't tip or tilt, he proposed a counterweight, a great landmass in the south. Later, the Roman scholar Claudius Ptolemy drew it into his maps as a vast land stretching from the southern tip of Africa all the way to Asia. On those maps, Terra Australis didn't exist because someone had seen it, it was there because people believed it had to be there. And it wasn't just the West. Ancient Chinese records speak of Nanji, a distant southern land with a climate and soil unlike anywhere else. Though more legend than fact, the idea reflected the same human obsession, that at the farthest edge of the world, in the place no one had reached, there must be a hidden continent. In medieval Europe, world maps, or mappamundi, often shaded in this southern land boldly. It wasn't just science, it was part myth. Some maps even decorated it with drawings of strange creatures, as if cartographers were filling the unknown with imagination, a wild land waiting to be tamed. By the 15th and 16th centuries, during the Great Age of Exploration, Terra Australis became an obsession. Explorers believed that if they found it, they would not only redraw the map but also uncover treasures no one had ever known. The Portuguese, the Spanish, then the Dutch, and the English all dreamed of reaching the southern frontier. But what they found instead were frozen seas and scattered islands, Tierra del Fuego, New Zealand, Tasmania, fragments that many eagerly attached to the myth of Terra Australis. Even before anyone truly set foot on Antarctica, its shadow crept into folklore. Polynesian sailors, masters of the open ocean, told of a cold land to the south where icy winds blew and seas were shrouded in mist. In South America, the Inca spoke of white men from the south, travelers from a distant frozen place. These stories were never backed by proof, yet their persistence made scholars wonder, could collective memory have preserved a shard of truth from an age when the Earth was still very different? As European maps grew more detailed, Terra Australis did not vanish. On the contrary, it was drawn even larger, stretching across the globe from Africa to South America, imagined as the foundation of the planet itself. Only when expeditions pushed closer to the southern circle did explorers realize it had been drawn too large, much of it pure invention. Yet even into the 18th century, Terra Australis still haunted sailors, a phantom that lured them into perilous voyages to uncover what really lay at the edge of the earth. In the end, Terra Australis Incognita wasn't just a geographical mistake. It was a testament to how humanity has always viewed the world through the lens of balance, believing in what must exist even without proof. And it was this illusion that sparked daring journeys that cost many their lives, yet finally peeled back the veil on a real continent locked away beneath thick, eternal ice. As the veil of legend around Terra Australis Incognita slowly fell away, the world entered an age of daring voyages. The 18th and 19th centuries marked a turning point when European expeditions, fueled by national pride and personal ambition, threw themselves into the frozen seas surrounding the southern pole. What had once been only a vague idea on maps now became a battleground for explorers, each fighting for the right to be the first to set foot on an untouched continent. The British, with their proud naval tradition, were among the pioneers. In the 18th century, Captain James Cook led expeditions farther south than anyone before, crossing the Antarctic Circle and recording endless fields of ice stretching to the horizon. Though he never landed on the continent itself, Cook proved something crucial: there was more than just ocean in the far south. There was a massive landmass buried beneath the ice. In his journals, he described the region as inhospitable to life and worthless for commerce. But it was exactly this cold dismissal that stoked the hunger of later generations to conquer it. By the 19th and early 20th centuries, the real race had begun. For European powers, planting a flag at the South Pole became a symbol of national strength. Three names stood out above all: Roald Amundsen of Norway, Robert Falcon Scott of Britain, and Ernest Shackleton, also British, remembered less for triumph than for heroic failure. Amundsen, methodical and precise, prepared meticulously. He studied Inuit techniques, mastered the use of dog sleds, and organized a lean, efficient team. Scott, on the other hand, embodied aristocratic pride and British nationalism. His expedition chose Manchurian ponies and motor sledges, choices poorly suited for the harsh Antarctic, yet reflecting his desire to showcase modern technology. The race unfolded like a pre-written tragedy. Amundsen, practical and focused, reached the South Pole in December 1911, planting the Norwegian flag at the bottom of the world. Weeks later, Scott's team arrived only to find they had lost. On the way back, exhausted and trapped in blizzards, Scott and his men perished one by one, leaving behind journals filled with haunting words and final messages to family and country. His story became not just one of failure but of sacrifice, remembered as a symbol of humanity's struggle against the edge of the earth. And then there was Shackleton. He never reached the pole, yet his name is etched in legend for a different reason: survival. In 1914, his ship Endurance was trapped and crushed by ice, forcing his crew to drift on ice floes for months. At last, Shackleton and a handful of men sailed hundreds of miles across freezing seas to find rescue and, against all odds, saved his entire team. His story stands as a testament to human willpower and extraordinary leadership. Through blood, sweat, and even their lives, these men turned Antarctica from a blank space on maps into part of humanity's story. And yet, the brutal conditions they faced revealed a paradox: Antarctica became both a symbol of human conquest and proof of the limits we can never truly overcome. The expeditions of the early 20th century didn't just return with journals and records, they opened a brand new door for science. As drills cut deep into the ice, as rare rocks and sediments were pulled from beneath the frozen continent and brought back to laboratories, a startling truth emerged: Antarctica was not always the barren wasteland we know today. Millions of years ago, it was a lush, green land with forests, rivers, and even massive dinosaurs roaming its ground. The idea of a warm Antarctica may sound impossible, yet the geological evidence is undeniable. Thick seams of coal buried beneath the ice are the remains of ancient forests. Scientists have uncovered petrified wood, giant ferns, and trees that once towered dozens of meters high. Some samples still carry visible growth rings, proving that this land once had seasons, long days of sunlight, and temperatures warm enough to sustain a thriving ecosystem. And not just plants, dinosaur fossils have been found here as well. Enormous plant eaters stretching across the forests, and predators adapted to months of darkness. These discoveries forced science to ask a bigger question: how did a land once filled with life transform into a world of eternal ice? Climate models suggest that as tectonic plates shifted, Antarctica drifted southward. The formation of the Antarctic circumpolar current, a swirling belt of cold water, cut it off from the warmth of the equator. Slowly, the climate cooled, and ice began its grip. But strangely, the process was not always linear. Some fossils show warm periods even after Antarctica had settled at the South Pole, proof that Earth's climate once shifted abruptly in ways we still struggle to explain. Were these just natural cycles, or signs of forces we don't yet understand? Today, the ice sheet, miles thick, hides countless secrets beneath it. Radar scans suggest there may still be entire fossilized forests locked away like a time machine sealed in silence. If uncovered one day, they could reveal not only the biological past but also how this planet once faced and adapted to extreme climate change. Yet the ice doesn't only preserve traces of life, it preserves the atmosphere itself. In ice cores stretching tens of meters, scientists find tiny bubbles of air trapped for hundreds of thousands of years. By studying them, we've built a timeline of Earth's climate. When CO2 levels rose, the planet warmed, ice melted, seas rose. When CO2 fell, the ice advanced again. The cycle repeats like the slow breathing of the Earth, and Antarctica is the key to unlocking that breath. Inside the ice lie not only ancient air but dust from distant deserts, pollen from long-vanished plants, even ash from violent volcanic eruptions. Piece them together, and the story revealed is not just Antarctica's, it is the history of the entire globe. Yet the paradox is this: the ice is both the most complete archive we have and the barrier that keeps us from reading it. What we know today is only the surface. Millions of years of history remain in the shadows. Perhaps that is why Antarctica feels like a locked library. Inside are priceless books, records of climate and environment. But to read them, we must turn the pages carefully, patiently. There is no rushing, no forcing. And in that cold silence, Antarctica seems to whisper, "This planet remembers." And its memory is only revealed to those humble enough to listen. While modern science insists that Antarctica has been locked beneath ice for millions of years, one strange artifact poses a difficult question: the Piri Reis map, drawn in 1513 by Ottoman Admiral Piri Reis. The map is remarkable not only for its detail far ahead of its time but for what it seems to reveal: a coastline of Antarctica without ice. Piri Reis was no ordinary figure. He was a skilled navigator, a scholar, and a man who gathered knowledge from many sources. In the notes accompanying his map, he wrote that it was compiled from about 20 older charts, Greek, Arabic, and even some said to date back to Columbus. What shocked researchers is that in the southern portion of his map, the coastline aligns uncannily well with the shape of Antarctica as we know it today, not buried in ice, but exposed as open land. Comparisons between the Piri Reis map and modern geological surveys have left many stunned. Some features match almost exactly with Antarctica's true coastline, revealed only in the 20th century by ice-penetrating radar. Beneath thousands of meters of ice, the shape of the land is astonishingly close to what Piri Reis drew over 500 years ago. And so the question arises: how could a 16th century admiral map a land that humanity would not officially set eyes on until the 19th century? Several theories have been proposed. Some argue that Piri Reis simply misassembled parts of South America, and what we see isn't really Antarctica at all. But this explanation falters when specific coastal features line up almost perfectly with modern data. Another theory suggests that his map may have been copied from far older sources, perhaps relics of a civilization that existed before Antarctica was sealed in ice. If true, it would mean that humanity once possessed seafaring and geographic knowledge far beyond what history records. Mainstream scholars remain cautious. They suggest Antarctica may have gone through periods with less ice in the past tens of thousands of years, and the Piri-Reis map could reflect a vague memory of those times. Yet, the precise match still nags at curiosity. If it was only coincidence, why does it align so closely, even under the scrutiny of modern radar? What deepens the mystery is that the Piri-Reis map is not alone. Other maps from the 16th and 17th centuries also depict the southern continent, sometimes attached to South America, sometimes separate. It seems that within humanity's geographic memory, a shadow of the southern land persisted even before it was ever confirmed. Could these maps be fragments of a lost body of knowledge, passed down through generations until they fell into Piri-Reis's hands? For centuries, the map has remained at the heart of debate. To cautious academics, it is an uncomfortable anomaly, a puzzle piece that doesn't fit neatly into the established history. To alternative researchers, it is proof of lost civilizations, advanced societies whose knowledge vanished but left behind traces. And to the wider public, it stands as a symbol of a timeless question: do we truly know the full story of our planet's past? The Piri-Reis map is less a relic than a doorway, opening onto endless speculation from science to myth. And in doing so, it casts Antarctica in a completely new light, not only as a frozen wilderness but as a land that may hold the memory of an entire civilization buried beneath the ice. When we look at Antarctica today as a vast block of ice isolated in the cold ocean, it's hard to imagine that this continent was once connected to many other lands. But geological maps and the theory of plate tectonics reveal an astonishing truth: Antarctica was not always alone. It was once part of the great supercontinent Gondwana, a massive landmass that included South America, Africa, India, Australia, and Madagascar. Picture the Earth about 180 million years ago. The world looked nothing like it does today. Instead of separate continents, giant landmasses were fused together, Gondwana in the south and Laurasia in the north. Antarctica wasn't locked at the pole yet, it sat closer to the equator, joined to lush, green lands. This connection allowed life to move freely across regions, creating a continuous ecosystem stretching from Africa all the way to the southern edge of the world. The fingerprints of Gondwana still remain deep within Antarctica. The Transantarctic Mountains, running for thousands of kilometers, share the same geological structures as ranges in South Africa and India. Coal beds, iron deposits, and ancient igneous rocks found in Antarctica match similar resources in Australia and Brazil. Geologists call these matching edges evidence that the continents once fit together as a single whole. When the plates began to shift, Gondwana broke apart in stages. Around 120 million years ago, India split off and sped northward, eventually colliding with Eurasia to form the Himalayas. About 100 million years ago, South America and Africa separated, leaving behind coastlines that still fit like pieces of a broken vase. Antarctica drifted toward the South Pole and became fully isolated about 34 million years ago when the Antarctic Circumpolar Current formed, a cold water ring that cut it off completely. From then on, the continent was locked into an eternal ice age. One of the strongest pieces of evidence linking Gondwana is the Glossopteris fossil, a giant fern that once grew in dense forests across the supercontinent. Fossil traces of Glossopteris have been found in India, South Africa, Australia, and Antarctica. These discoveries helped scientists in the 19th century finally accept the once outrageous theory of continental drift. The image of a single plant species spanning continents thousands of miles apart remains a powerful proof of Earth's unified beginning. Gondwana is more than just a geological concept, it's a reminder that Earth's history is a grand epic of movement. No continent is fixed forever, all drift, collide, and break apart like massive icebergs adrift in a boundless sea. Antarctica today is only one chapter of that story, a chapter of separation, cold, and isolation. Yet before that, it was bound closely to lands where people now live. Recent studies of Antarctica's bedrock add even more depth to this picture. Mountain ranges buried under ice, hidden mineral veins, and vast fault lines reveal that Antarctica still plays a strategic role in Earth's global story. The mineral resources formed within Gondwana didn't disappear, they remain locked beneath the ice, secrets waiting in silence. Seen in the light of Gondwana, Antarctica's isolation today is only a brief moment in a much longer history. Once it was part of a familiar world where life moved and thrived, before being split apart by the planet's shifting plates. That memory makes Antarctica feel both close and distant. It once belonged to us, yet now lies sealed away, a frozen, hidden land beyond our reach. If Gondwana tells the story of Antarctica's distant past, then modern discoveries open a new chapter. Beneath miles of ice, Antarctica hides an underground world still full of life, a world sealed away for millions of years, where rivers still flow, vast lakes quietly exist, and ancient microbes continue to survive in conditions that should be impossible. The most famous of these discoveries is Lake Vostok. Buried under more than 4 kilometers of ice, Lake Vostok is 3 times the size of Lake Ontario in North America and ranks among the largest freshwater lakes on Earth. What makes it extraordinary is that it has been cut off from the atmosphere for at least 15 million years. This means any life within it has evolved independently, completely isolated from the rest of the planet. When Russian scientists drilled down and retrieved the first samples of water, they discovered traces of bacteria unknown to science. These tiny organisms appeared adapted to survive in a dark, high-pressure environment rich in methane, a habitat eerily reminiscent of places we imagine far beyond Earth. But Vostok is not alone. Ice-penetrating radar and satellite technology have revealed hundreds of other subglacial lakes, all connected by a vast network of rivers flowing beneath the ice. Some of these rivers stretch for hundreds of kilometers, transporting water, minerals, and even microorganisms through the frozen underworld. This discovery completely reshapes our view of Antarctica. Far from being a dead block of ice, it is a dynamic, complex, and hidden system, silently active beneath its frozen surface. This raises profound questions. If life can survive in total darkness, without sunlight, without contact with the outside world for millions of years, then what stops life from existing in extreme environments elsewhere? Beneath the ice of Jupiter's moon Europa or Saturn's moon Enceladus? In this sense, Antarctica becomes a natural laboratory, offering humanity a glimpse into the possibility of life beyond Earth. Yet what lies under the ice inspires more than science, it fuels speculation. For if entire ecosystems have been sealed away for so long, who can say with certainty that only microbes exist there? Some have suggested the possibility of more complex life forms or even traces of lost civilizations buried beneath the ice. Mainstream science rejects these ideas, but they persist in public imagination, especially when strange, unexplained radar readings hint at unusual structures hidden below. One fact is undeniable: these sealed environments are Earth's memory vaults. They preserve climate, biology, and geology from millions of years ago, untouched and pristine in a way almost nowhere else can match. But that very purity has also turned Antarctica into a place of controversy. Certain areas are declared off-limits, not because we lack the technology, but because they must remain absolutely untouched. From a scientific standpoint, this seems reasonable, but it also leaves room for suspicion, fueling conspiracy theories about what might really be hidden there. Deep within its ice, Antarctica feels like a locked diary, allowing us to read only a few lines at a time. And the less we are told, the more our imagination fills in the blanks. That is why Antarctica belongs not only to science but to myth. For while scientists search for clues of ancient climates, others see in it the shadow of Atlantis, fallen gods, or even a gateway leading down into a hidden world. When we look at the hidden lakes and ancient microbes beneath Antarctica's ice, our imagination takes one step further. If so much remains concealed under the frozen surface, could Antarctica itself be the lost homeland of the greatest civilization in legend, Atlantis? Throughout the 20th century, one of the most provocative theories about Antarctica came from the geographer Charles Hapgood. Instead of simply studying old maps for answers, Hapgood proposed something far bolder: that Earth's crust may once have shifted rapidly, sliding an entire continent from a temperate zone down to the frozen South Pole. And in that violent displacement, a flourishing civilization, Atlantis, was buried beneath eternal ice. He called this idea Earth crust displacement. Unlike Alfred Wegener's gradual theory of continental drift, Hapgood argued that Earth's thin outer shell could slide all at once over the softer mantle below, moving thousands of kilometers in what would be only a short moment in geological time. If such a shift occurred, lands with mild climates could suddenly be thrust into polar conditions, an upheaval dramatic enough to wipe out an entire civilization. In his 1966 book, Maps of the Ancient Sea Kings, Hapgood argued that Atlantis was not a mythical land swallowed by the ocean, as Plato described, but rather Antarctica itself before the ice. He believed that about 12,000 years ago, when Earth's crust shifted, the continent slipped from a temperate latitude down to the South Pole. Any civilization that had thrived there would have been destroyed by the sudden freezing, while fragments of its memory survived in myths around the world, preserved under the name Atlantis. The theory sparked fierce debate, but it also fascinated many. Some scholars noted that Hapgood's idea could explain why so many cultures share legends of a lost land in the far south. It also seemed to align with scientific evidence that parts of Antarctica experienced unusually warm climates in the not-so-distant past. Even without direct archaeological proof, the timing, at the end of the last ice age when sea levels rose dramatically, made his theory even more compelling. Perhaps most surprising, Hapgood was not entirely alone. Albert Einstein, in a foreword to one of Hapgood's works, admitted the theory was worth serious consideration since it offered a fresh way of thinking about Earth's changes. Einstein never declared Hapgood correct, but his cautious support was enough to draw attention from the scientific community. Of course, most modern geologists dismissed the Earth crust displacement idea, pointing out that it conflicts with the well-established evidence of plate tectonics. Yet the Atlantis-Antarctica theory has endured not just among alternative researchers but also in popular culture. It paints a haunting image of an advanced civilization erased almost overnight, leaving only faint echoes in humanity's collective memory. The real power of Hapgood's theory may not lie in whether it is right or wrong, but in the question it forces us to confront: could we be missing an entire chapter of human history? If massive geological shifts could happen in the past, how many civilizations might have been erased, surviving only as legend? And so, Antarctica becomes a symbol of forgetting, a continent locked in ice, like a colossal coffin holding the remains of a lost world. Whether Hapgood was mistaken or not, his theory keeps alive an eternal question: under those miles of ice, could the myth of Atlantis simply be waiting to be unearthed? If Hapgood's Atlantis in Antarctica theory was just one bold explanation, then humanity's myths feel like echoes from a much older memory, whispers of a shared recollection of a southern land. What's striking is that from South America to Polynesia, all the way to the Mediterranean, we find stories of a distant place, sometimes radiant, sometimes frozen, that vanished beyond human reach. Is this just coincidence, or fragments of memory about a continent long sealed away? The Inca of the Andes told of white men from the south, strange figures emerging from a frozen land, sometimes described as bringers of knowledge. They were said to have taught agriculture, architecture, and then disappeared after some great disaster. In remote Patagonia, the Tehuelche people passed down tales of pale-skinned giants twice the height of ordinary humans living in the cold ends of the earth. When European explorers arrived in the 16th century, they too recorded stories of the Patagonian giants. Some sailors even claimed to have seen towering figures on the wild coasts, as if legend and reality had briefly touched. What makes this curious is that many of these stories existed before Europeans ever set foot in South America, which makes the idea that they were just exaggerations of meeting taller outsiders less convincing. Perhaps the giants of the ice were metaphors, personifications of the glaciers and frigid winds sweeping in from the south. But it's also possible they were blurred memories of ancient encounters with groups of people long vanished, leaving no trace but myth. Across the Pacific, the master navigators of Polynesia told stories of Hawaii, a sacred land in the far south, believed to be the origin of their ancestors. To them, Hawaii was not only the place where souls return after death but also a shared homeland, a land that once existed but was lost. While many scholars interpret Hawaii as a cultural metaphor, when placed alongside the Inca and Patagonian stories, the similarities suggest a deeper collective memory. Even in the Greek world, where Plato wrote of Atlantis, geographers like Ptolemy and Strabo speculated about a vast southern continent, Terra Australis, necessary to balance the Earth. This idea carried on into medieval maps, showing how both East and West were haunted by the thought of a land no one had ever seen. In many cultures, the figures from the south, giants or beings from another realm, were not enemies but semi-divine figures inspiring both awe and fear. Often remembered as bringers of knowledge, the pattern mirrors the Atlantis myth itself, an advanced civilization destroyed, yet leaving faint traces behind. In human culture, giants often symbolize memories of a bygone age when greater forces walked the earth. The Titans of Greece, the Nephilim of the Bible, the colossal figures in Polynesian myth, they all share one trait: they belong to an earlier world, one swept aside to make room for humanity. When South American, Polynesian, and Mediterranean legends are read together, Antarctica begins to look like the stage where these collective memories converge. The true importance of these myths may not lie in whether they are literally accurate, but in their strange harmony. From South America to Oceania, from the Mediterranean to medieval Europe, cultures far apart seem to share a memory of a southern land, distant, haunting, and lost. And it is this imagination that has transformed Antarctica from a lifeless block of ice into a living symbol of fear, of reverence, and of humanity's eternal longing to explore. It doesn't give us a final answer, but it does open a door to the ultimate question: beneath the ice, could echoes of a lost age still remain? After the legends of South American giants, the story shifts to the present. In today's age of satellites and the internet, Antarctica is no longer just a distant land of imagination. It's an open canvas visible to the entire world. And yet, paradoxically, the more images we have, the deeper the mysteries seem to grow. Amid millions of satellite photos, strange shapes appear, sparking the question: is Antarctica hiding signs of artificial structures, or are we simply being tricked by light, shadows, and ice? One of the most famous examples is the so-called Antarctic Pyramid. Circulating satellite photos show a structure with sharp edges, triangular sides, and a pointed peak rising above the endless white. From afar, it looks eerily like a massive pyramid, as if built by human hands or even by a forgotten civilization. Speculation spread quickly. Some linked it to Atlantis, others to extraterrestrials, and still others claimed it was a secret government base hidden in plain sight. Mainstream scientists offered a simpler explanation. They said it was just a nunatak, a mountain peak poking through the ice, shaped into a pyramid-like form after millions of years of erosion. To them, the pyramid image was nothing more than pareidolia, the human brain's tendency to turn random shapes into something familiar, the same way we see faces in clouds. But reason alone wasn't enough to stop the craze. The photos spread across social media, edited, zoomed, and captioned until they became part of a digital legend. The Antarctic Pyramid videos racked up millions of views, asking, why are governments silent? Why is no one allowed to visit that site? Ironically, the very silence fueled the mystery. And the pyramid wasn't the only anomaly. Other satellite images showed dark streaks that looked like tunnels, rectangular shadows cut into the ice, or strange openings leading underground. Some were later explained as natural shadows or image processing glitches. But for those who believe Antarctica hides secrets, they became proof of underground bases and unknown structures buried beneath the ice. The power of these images doesn't lie in whether they're accurate, it lies in how they spark curiosity. Antarctica is already off-limits to nearly everyone, so any anomaly becomes fuel for imagination. A dark patch can turn into a massive entrance, a sharp peak into an ancient pyramid. And so the bigger question remains: are we only fooling ourselves with distorted pictures? Or is something truly being concealed beneath the ice? Science offers reasonable answers, but it cannot extinguish the belief that Antarctica holds more than we know. And it is in this gap between what science explains and what people want to believe that modern legends find their enduring life. From icy pyramids carved by stone and snow, the human imagination stretches even further. If those strange images really hint at something hidden, could Antarctica itself be a gateway to another world? Some theories suggest that deep beneath the continent lie entrances leading to an underground realm, a place that goes by many names in legend, from Hollow Earth to Agartha. The Hollow Earth theory first appeared in the 17th century when a few European thinkers speculated that Earth might contain multiple inner shells with vast open spaces inside. Over time, the idea drifted away from science and settled into modern mythology. What's fascinating is how often Antarctica shows up in these tales, as if this remote land was chosen as the perfect veil to conceal a larger truth. One of the most famous stories tied to this belief is about Agartha, a mystical underground world said to be home to advanced beings or entire civilizations existing parallel to humanity but hidden from the surface. Many Eastern traditions, from Hinduism to Tibetan Buddhism, describe underground realms or hidden cities where wisdom, enlightenment, and even immortality could be found. When these myths merged with the icy image of Antarctica, they fueled the idea that Agartha might be accessible through portals at the North and South Poles. That belief only grew stronger with the stories surrounding Admiral Richard Byrd, the American explorer who famously flew over both poles in the 20th century. According to unofficial documents said to be his secret diary, Byrd claimed to have seen a lush green land beyond the Antarctic ice, with a strange sunlight and mysterious creatures. While most historians dismiss these documents as fabrications, they've been enough to anchor Hollow Earth firmly within Antarctica's mythology. Between fact and fiction, one thing is undeniable: Antarctica is the perfect stage for underground world legends to thrive. Miles thick ice, hidden ice caves no one has entered, flight-restricted zones, and areas off-limits to exploration, all of it feeds the sense that something is being concealed. And for many believers, the louder mainstream science denies it, the stronger their conviction grows. Hollow Earth and Agartha may be myths, but they echo something deeper: humanity's refusal to accept that every mystery of our planet has already been solved. We need the idea of an unexplored land, a hidden doorway to another world, to keep our curiosity alive. And in its cold silence, Antarctica has become the perfect symbol of that belief. From here, the story of Antarctica steps into a new era. No longer just myth or speculation, it became a focal point of political upheaval in the 20th century. As empires fought over territory and power, Antarctica stopped being a forgotten land. It turned into a pawn on the geopolitical chessboard, a place where secrets weren't only wrapped in legend but also guarded by military strength and diplomacy. And it all began with a name that still carries a chilling weight: Nazi Germany. In 1938, Hitler's regime sent an expedition to Antarctica, organized by the German Navy and carried out aboard the ship Schwabenland. The official mission was to explore and conduct aerial surveys to expand economic influence, specifically to search for new whaling grounds, a vital source of oil at the time. But behind that surface-level goal, documents and rumors suggest the Nazis had something bigger in mind: to claim a piece of Antarctica and establish a secret military base. The region they explored was named Neuschwabenland, New Swabia, located in Queen Maud Land. Over several months, the expedition flew across the ice, taking thousands of aerial photographs, dropping flags to mark territory, and creating detailed maps. The move sparked unease among other nations, since it lined up perfectly with Nazi Germany's aggressive expansionist policies already playing out in Europe. After the war, the lack of solid information about this expedition left a vacuum, and that vacuum was quickly filled with wild theories. Many came to believe the Nazis didn't just scout whale-rich seas but actually built secret underground bases beneath the Antarctic ice. Some stories claimed they constructed massive bunkers, experimented with advanced weapons, even tested flying disc technology, ideas that sounded decades ahead of their time. One of the most popular theories is that the Nazis discovered something extraordinary in Antarctica, maybe the ruins of an ancient civilization, maybe an entrance to the underworld like in Hollow Earth lore, or perhaps simply a hidden stronghold to rebuild power after defeat in Europe. These stories were fueled further by accounts of missing German officers after 1945 and whispers that U-boats slipped away to the southernmost seas. Mainstream historians, of course, reject these claims. They argue there's no credible evidence the Nazis ever built bases in Antarctica. Instead, they see Neuschwabenland as more symbolic, a propaganda-driven expedition to secure Germany's place on the global stage rather than a serious military outpost. Still, it's hard to ignore how deeply the Nazi obsession with mysticism, from Thule to Atlantis, made Antarctica the perfect backdrop for conspiracy and imagination. And after 1945, the silence around Neuschwabenland only deepened the suspicion. If it was just a routine expedition, why were so many documents still restricted? Why do stories of secret Nazi bases keep resurfacing in dozens of fringe books and accounts? And perhaps most provocatively, why just a few years later did the United States suddenly launch one of the largest military operations in Antarctic history, Operation High Jump? If the story of Neuschwabenland still lingers in the fog of speculation, then just a year after World War II ended, the world witnessed something far stranger. The United States launched one of the largest military operations in history at Antarctica, Operation High Jump. With such a massive scale, it immediately raised the question, why would a frozen, seemingly useless continent require a full-scale military presence? Operation High Jump took place from August 1946 to February 1947, led by Admiral Richard E. Byrd, one of America's most famous explorers. On paper, the stated goals were straightforward: to train troops in extreme cold, to test equipment, and to conduct scientific research. But when you look at the scale, it was clear there was more going on than a simple military exercise. The operation deployed nearly 4,700 personnel, 13 ships, and 33 aircraft, a force comparable to real wartime campaigns. Aircraft carriers, destroyers, even submarines were included. It's hard to believe all of that was just a practice in cold weather. Some records also suggest the U.S. brought extensive aerial photography equipment with the ambition of creating a comprehensive map of Antarctica. What fueled the mystery even more was the timing. Planned to last 6 to 8 months, the operation abruptly ended after less than 2. Official reports blamed harsh weather and logistical difficulties, but for many, that explanation rang hollow. Why would such a powerful, well-prepared military force suddenly pack up and retreat? That gap in information was quickly filled with speculation. One of the most popular theories claims the U.S. fleet had actually been deployed to hunt down a secret Nazi base hidden beneath the Antarctic ice, where remnants of the regime and German scientists might have fled after Berlin fell. Some stories went even further, claiming the Americans encountered advanced technology, experimental weapons, or even flying discs, forcing them to withdraw. The theory gained momentum thanks to strange remarks attributed to Admiral Byrd himself. After the operation, he gave an interview to South American newspapers in which he allegedly warned that America must prepare for the possibility of being attacked by flying objects that can travel from pole to pole at incredible speeds. Though these words were never confirmed in official documents, they became fuel for decades of speculation about what Byrd really saw in Antarctica. Mainstream historians offer a far more practical explanation. They argue that High Jump was part of America's push to assert itself as a superpower after the war, securing the polar regions, testing global reach, and preparing for the Cold War. Detailed mapping of Antarctica had both scientific and strategic value, especially as transpolar flight routes were being studied. From this perspective, the early withdrawals simply reflected the brutal conditions of Antarctica, not a hidden battle. And yet, the shadows of High Jump remain. Why send such an enormous force for a scientific mission? Why do Byrd's alleged comments clash with official reports? And why did Antarctica, a place long considered meaningless, suddenly become the target of one of the largest military expeditions of the post-war era? It was exactly these unanswered questions that turned Operation High Jump into the perfect bridge, linking the Nazi Neuschwabenland legends with the later political mysteries of Antarctica. And when Admiral Byrd became the central figure, the words attributed to him, whether true or not, opened a new doorway toward a vast land beyond the pole, a place that seemed to suggest another world unlike anything we thought we knew about our planet. According to South American newspapers in the post-war years, Byrd gave an interview in 1947 in which he warned that the United States must be vigilant against the possibility of an attack by flying objects that can move from pole to pole at incredible speeds. The statement caused an immediate stir. Some papers even quoted him as saying there was a vast, lush land beyond the southern pole, untouched and unexplored. Later researchers questioned the authenticity of those printed reports, but by then the words had already been absorbed into the growing body of Antarctic legend. Part of the myth also came from what's claimed to be Byrd's secret diary. According to this controversial account, Byrd allegedly recorded strange experiences during his polar flights, where he described seeing green valleys, unusual animals, and even making contact with beings more advanced than humans. In one often quoted passage, Byrd supposedly wrote that his plane was taken under control and flown into a land free of ice, where he encountered the inhabitants of the inner Earth. Of course, neither the U.S. military nor academic historians ever confirmed the diary's existence, dismissing it as a fabrication. Yet, for the public imagination, it became proof for the hollow Earth theory and Antarctica's hidden secrets. What makes this even more intriguing is that even without the disputed documents, Byrd's career alone invites speculation. As one of the first pilots to fly over both the North and South Poles, he personally witnessed uncharted regions with his own eyes. His flights documented photographs and observations of areas not fully covered in ice, as well as strange weather phenomena. Perhaps it was these experiences that made his words so haunting, because they didn't just come from fantasy, but from a man who had truly seen things few others could even picture. Some modern researchers argue that Byrd was only referring to unexplored parts of Antarctica along the coast where ice had receded to reveal dry valleys, and that his warning about high-speed flying craft was simply a metaphor for emerging Cold War technology. But his vague phrasing, combined with sensational newspaper reports, gave his words a life of their own, transforming them into fuel for the idea of a secret world beneath the ice. We may never know what Byrd truly meant, nor how much the press exaggerated his statements, but it was precisely this ambiguity that made him a kind of messenger for grand theories of the hollow Earth, of Agartha, and of lost civilizations hiding at the bottom of the world. After Admiral Byrd's strange words, Antarctica slowly moved out of the age of daring expeditions and into a completely new phase, the age of global politics and diplomacy. The clearest sign of that shift came in 1959 with the creation of the Antarctic Treaty, a document many still consider one of the most unusual agreements of the 20th century. Throughout the 1950s, the world was caught in the most dangerous years of the Cold War. The United States and the Soviet Union clashed on every front: nuclear weapons, space exploration, political influence. And yet, in the middle of this global standoff, something almost unbelievable happened. Both sides agreed that Antarctica would belong to no one. On December 1, 1959, in Washington, D.C., 12 nations, including the U.S., the USSR, the UK, France, Japan, Australia, and Norway, signed the Antarctic Treaty. The treaty laid out a few key principles: the entire continent would be used only for peaceful purposes. All military activity was strictly banned. Scientific research was encouraged, and results had to be shared openly. Nuclear tests and the dumping of radioactive waste were forbidden. No country could make new territorial claims, and all existing claims were frozen, set aside indefinitely. What made the treaty so strange was the level of agreement. In a world where territory was almost always the spark of war, Antarctica was suddenly taken out of the game. That led many observers to wonder, why would the superpowers willingly give up a continent twice the size of Australia, one that might hold vast resources beneath its ice? Did they know something the rest of the world did not? Some historians argue that the answer is simple: no one wanted to pour money and manpower into such a hostile, hard-to-control land while the Cold War was already consuming so many resources. The treaty, in this view, was simply a way to avoid opening yet another front. But to those who believe in deeper secrets, that explanation feels too thin. They suggest the treaty was really a cover, a way for world powers to keep Antarctica's hidden truths under wraps. Whether that meant ancient ruins, secret bases, or something far stranger, suspicion only deepened when people looked at the treaty's strict rules on access. Anyone wanting to explore, survey, or even research the continent needed special permission. Huge areas were closed off under the banner of environmental protection. Commercial flights were not allowed. Even scientists could only operate within tightly controlled zones. For many, this level of restriction didn't look like openness, it looked like deliberate control. From there, conspiracy theories flourished. Some say the treaty was designed to keep the world from discovering archaeological finds that could rewrite history. Others believe it was to hide secret military bases, perhaps remnants of Nazi Germany, or perhaps new Cold War facilities built by the superpowers themselves. And of course, there are those who claim the real purpose was to block public access to evidence of UFOs or extraterrestrial life. Whatever the truth may be, one thing is undeniable: the Antarctic Treaty is one of the most successful diplomatic agreements in modern history. More than 60 years later, it is still in effect, and more nations have joined it. In a world defined by conflict, Antarctica has become the only place with no war, no armies, no borders. And yet, it is exactly this absolute peace that keeps the suspicions alive, the feeling that what looks like peace may in fact be a carefully negotiated silence. The Antarctic Treaty of 1959 officially declared the frozen continent a land of peace, dedicated to science, free of military presence, and free of territorial disputes. But anyone who has studied the maps or looked closely at the fine print will notice something hard to ignore: vast areas marked as restricted zones, regions where access is limited or outright forbidden. That naturally raises a troubling question: if Antarctica is truly nothing more than a peaceful scientific preserve, then why are there no-go zones and blocked flight corridors? In reality, commercial flights over Antarctica are almost non-existent. International routes always bend around South America, South Africa, or Australia, but never cut straight across the continent. The official explanation is aviation safety: extreme cold, no backup airports, unstable communications. Yet many argue that modern aviation is more than capable of handling such challenges. So why do airlines continue to treat Antarctica like a blank space on the map? It doesn't stop at passenger flights. Even scientific activity is tightly controlled. Satellite maps often show blurred areas, missing data, or zones that simply aren't publicly available. Independent researchers have pointed out no-fly corridors drawn across the continent, areas where flights are not allowed to pass or land. Officially, these are said to protect fragile ecosystems. But for the public, such reasoning only fuels suspicion. Is this really about environmental protection, or about keeping secrets buried under the ice? The most popular theories claim these restricted zones conceal things the world isn't supposed to see: Nazi bases left over from the war, ancient structures trapped beneath the glaciers, or even cutting-edge military experiments carried out by today's superpowers in direct violation of the Antarctic Treaty itself. Adding fuel to the fire are satellite images that occasionally surface online before being quickly removed. Some appear to show massive dark holes like cave entrances, or geometric structures with sharp edges that stand out against the ice. To believers in Hollow Earth or Agartha, these are gateways to an underground world guarded by global powers through access bans. To more practical minds, the images still hint that Antarctica may not be empty at all, but hiding infrastructure or sensitive resources. The map of restricted zones becomes even more suspicious when compared with 20th century expeditions. Many teams were allowed deep into the interior only to be forced to turn back near certain coordinates. A few scientists have even admitted publicly that they were denied access and prevented from releasing data from sensitive regions. Such control leaves people wondering, is environmental preservation just a cover story, while the real goal is to keep discoveries under wraps? Antarctica, in this sense, is like an unfinished puzzle. The visible pieces are clear enough, but key sections are deliberately covered. Each restricted zone, each blocked flight corridor becomes an empty space that sparks imagination. And it is those empty spaces that have given birth to countless theories, making Antarctica one of the most mysterious and myth-filled places in modern history. When the Antarctic Treaty was signed, many assumed the frozen continent would become a symbol of absolute peace, nothing more than climate research stations and quiet scientific outposts. But reality proved far more complicated. As the Cold War unfolded, Antarctica stepped onto the stage as a silent battleground, a theater of shadow conflicts no less tense than Berlin or Cuba. With its unique geography, sitting at Earth's southern pole, stretching across a vast sheet of ice, and lying near critical transpolar flight paths, Antarctica quickly became what both the United States and the Soviet Union saw as golden ground for surveillance. In an era when nuclear war felt possible at any moment, the idea of placing radar or missile systems at the South Pole carried immense strategic weight. From here, a base could monitor aircraft and submarines across both the South Atlantic and the South Pacific. On paper, the research stations focused on geology, climate, and biology. But many observers suspected that behind those modest scientific-looking buildings were hidden intelligence centers, intercepting radio signals, monitoring satellites, even testing classified military technologies. Radar towers, satellite antennas, and fortified bunkers carved into the ice began to appear. Were they truly for weather data, or for something much bigger? From the 1960s through the 1980s, Antarctica became home to a growing number of so-called international research facilities. Yet this cooperation often looked more like camouflage. Reports circulated that the U.S. had deployed sonar arrays beneath the ice to track Soviet submarines moving through the Southern Ocean. Meanwhile, the Soviets were believed to have installed space monitoring equipment inside their stations to capture signals from American satellites. To the public, the pictures showed cheerful scientists in bright white parkas. But beneath the surface, a shadow war of surveillance was unfolding. Some of the mystery came from persistent stories of underground bases. Rumors claimed that both superpowers had carved vast complexes beneath the ice, research labs, weapons depots, command centers. Explorers even described tunnels so massive that trucks could pass through them, hidden deep under the Antarctic ice sheet. While official sources never confirmed such claims, the existence of underground facilities like the Amundsen-Scott Station proved that large-scale construction beneath the ice was indeed possible. Adding to the suspicion were the no-fly zones that began appearing during this era. Officially, they existed to protect fragile ecosystems, but curiously many of these restricted areas overlapped with key research bases. To skeptics, this was no coincidence. These were the places where secret military testing was happening in violation of the very treaty that declared Antarctica a land of peace. By the 1980s, the arms race had reached a fever pitch. Laser technology, directed energy weapons, even space defense initiatives like the infamous Star Wars program were being explored. Some theories suggest that Antarctica, isolated, silent, and easily hidden from public scrutiny, was the perfect testing ground. If something went wrong, the ice itself would bury the evidence. In this way, Cold War Antarctica was never just a meteorological outpost. It was a hidden battlefield where science and military ambition overlapped, where the public saw only the surface, while the deeper layers of the ice concealed strategic games of power. The strict silence surrounding these bases, combined with the continent's rigid restrictions, turned Antarctica into a colossal black box of modern history. And then, even as the Cold War faded, that black box was never opened. The old secrets never disappeared, they simply piled on top of new ones. Because in today's world, Antarctica is no longer just a story of politics and military strategy. It has become the stage for something stranger, mysterious streaks of light, unexplained signals from the sky, reports of UFOs from pilots and researchers. This was the beginning of a new era of Antarctic mysteries, where the ice and the heavens seemed to merge into a silent performance. One of the most frequently retold stories comes from pilots flying near the southern pole. Many reported seeing lights that moved in ways no aircraft could, streaking across the sky at impossible speeds. Sometimes they appeared in groups flying in formation, only to vanish in an instant. These reports were rarely made public, but they circulated quietly within military and research communities. For believers in UFOs, Antarctica became the ultimate hidden stage for otherworldly activity. Even research stations have logged strange phenomena. Scientists at the Amundsen-Scott base described brilliant halos stretching across the sky for hours with no natural explanation to account for them. Blue or silvery white beams appeared at times, unlike the normal auroras one might expect. Some reports even mentioned strange sounds accompanying the lights, a low hum that seemed to resonate from the sky itself. These accounts almost never reached the public, and when they did, they were quickly dismissed as unidentified atmospheric phenomena. One of the most controversial cases happened in 1965, when a group of Argentine pilots claimed they encountered bizarre flying objects near Antarctica. They described orange lights racing at impossible speed before shooting straight up into the atmosphere and vanishing. The story was picked up by South American newspapers, and to this day it remains one of Antarctica's most famous UFO files. What made these reports harder to dismiss was the nature of Antarctica itself. This isn't a crowded place with random eyewitnesses who might mistake what they see. Every flight, every observation comes from trained professionals, pilots, scientists, military officers. And yet the silence remains deafening. If they truly witnessed these events, why weren't the reports ever openly analyzed? Were they locked away for national security reasons? Or did they brush against something beyond human understanding? Of course, not every explanation points to extraterrestrials. Some scientists argue that the lights could be reflections of ice or unusual polar atmospheric effects. But these theories fail to explain the speed, the coordinated movement, and the sudden disappearances described by the witnesses. And in a place with virtually no civilian traffic, where every flight is logged and cleared, just where did these unidentified craft come from? For conspiracy theorists, the answer lies closer to home. Antarctica, they argue, may be the testing ground for top-secret aviation technology. Some believe the great powers have experimented here with disc-shaped aircraft technology, possibly inspired by Nazi research from World War II. And when pilots or scientists accidentally glimpse them, the sightings are brushed aside as strange lights, a convenient cover for truths not meant to be revealed. If the skies over Antarctica once made people look up in wonder with strange lights and unexplained phenomena, then the ground and the ice beneath it holds another, quieter revolution, the transformation of Earth's climate. Antarctica has long stood as a symbol of permanence, a frozen world that seemed eternal. But in just the past few decades, that ancient ice has begun to crack, to melt, revealing things humanity has never seen before. Scientists confirm that the pace of Antarctic ice melt is accelerating year by year. Massive icebergs the size of entire cities break off and drift into the ocean. This isn't just a warning sign for global sea levels, it's also a doorway into hidden valleys, buried sediments, and underground lakes sealed away for millions of years. Some dry valleys, once locked beneath sheets of ice, are slowly emerging, landscapes thought lost since the Ice Age. What amazes researchers is that every time the ice retreats, Antarctica reveals another fragment of its astonishing past. Pollen, fossilized plants, even insect remains have been found in the thawing layers, proof that this continent was once a lush forest with mild climates and rich ecosystems. Other sediment layers contain the remains of marine creatures, evidence that Antarctica wasn't just forest once, but also connected to vast oceans when it formed part of the supercontinent Gondwana. One of the most remarkable discoveries involves subglacial lakes, bodies of water sealed beneath thousands of meters of ice. Thanks to melting ice and ice-penetrating radar, we now know there are hundreds of such lakes. The most famous is Lake Vostok, a world locked in darkness for millions of years where scientists hope to find life forms unknown to us. As the ice continues to recede, reaching and studying these lakes becomes more feasible, and sparks the imagination. If life exists down there, is it only microbial, or could it be something more complex? Melting ice has also revealed strange geological structures. Satellites have captured images of massive mountain ranges stretching hundreds of kilometers beneath the ice. In some places, perfectly straight lines, like artificial cuts, appear in the terrain. To some, these look less like geology and more like the remnants of an ancient civilization buried under ice and time. Mainstream science explains them as natural formations, the result of tectonic shifts. But the geometric precision of some shapes still leaves many unconvinced that nature alone could carve them so cleanly. Climate change and melting ice, then, are both a warning and an opportunity, a warning because they threaten global stability, but also an opportunity because they may finally let humanity access secrets sealed away for millions of years. And yet, the paradox is clear, the more Antarctica reveals, the tighter the control over information becomes. Research data is often locked away, with only fragments released to the public. Satellite images sometimes vanish or are blurred out. It feels as though what's emerging from the ice isn't only fossils and lakes, but things too sensitive to share. And that is why many believe the melting of Antarctica isn't just a natural process, it's like a curtain slowly being drawn back. And behind it might be not only Earth's forgotten history but truths that the world is not yet ready to face. The question is no longer just how fast is the ice melting, but also what will we see when it's finally gone. But not everything Antarctica reveals comes from nature. Alongside the secrets unlocked by time and climate, there are mysteries tied directly to people, unexplained disappearances, expeditions that vanished into the ice, leaving behind questions that never close. Unlike the early 19th century expeditions, where tragedy could be blamed on a lack of technology, the disappearances of the 20th and 21st centuries raise bigger questions. With modern science and advanced equipment, why do people still vanish without a trace? One of the most talked about cases involves aircraft accidents. During the 1960s and 1970s, both military and civilian pilots reported strange incidents while flying near Antarctica. Some flights allegedly disappeared from radar in seconds, never to be heard from again. Wreckage was never recovered, even after massive search operations involving entire fleets. Harsh weather, blizzards, violent winds, fractured ice fields, could explain much of it. But some reports describe sudden unexplained interference in communications, as if an invisible force cut off every signal. For many, that sounded less like weather and more like electromagnetic anomalies, or even the possibility of hidden bases interfering. And it wasn't just pilots. Ground expeditions have their own chilling stories. In one case, a team was recorded leaving a research station to survey a stretch of ice. Days passed and no one returned. When rescue crews arrived, they found only fragments, half-erected tents, tools left behind, long drag marks in the snow, as if the team fled in panic. The official record listed them as missing under extreme conditions, but the details echoed the infamous Dyatlov Pass incident in Russia's Ural Mountains, another mystery that has never been fully explained. Some cases were even darker. At certain research stations, scientists were said to have gone out to check equipment and never returned. Some vanished just a few hundred yards from safety. Helicopter searches turned up nothing, as though they had been swallowed whole by the endless white. Strangely, these incidents rarely reached international headlines. And when they did, reports were brief, closed off quickly, and soon forgotten. Official explanations often point to the brutality of Antarctica itself, sudden storms, hidden ice crevasses, or lethal cold that can kill within minutes. But for those who believe in conspiracy, that explanation feels too thin. They suggest that disappearances feel less like nature and more like controlled information. In several cases, radar logs and communication records vanished right along with the victims. Some suggest these people stumbled across something they were never meant to see, and that their disappearance was no accident. Antarctica, with its perfect silence and ability to conceal anything, becomes the ultimate stage where the impossible can happen unseen. And these disappearances only darken the continent's shadowy reputation. They leave us with the eerie sense that some presence, visible or invisible, is always there, guarding whatever lies buried beneath the ice. Stories of vanishings don't just leave us unsettled, they force a larger question: what is worth hiding so much that human lives are the price? If these are just natural accidents, why do reports and data so often vanish along with the victims? And if they are ordinary tragedies, why is there such a rush to close the files? And while the stories of vanished explorers still cast their shadow across history, there is another truth buried just as deeply: Antarctica holds a staggering wealth of natural resources. Beneath its massive ice sheet, geologists have discovered oil, natural gas, and rare minerals, resources powerful enough to shift the balance of the global economy. And that, many argue, may be the real reason Antarctica has always been guarded so tightly. Geological studies from the 20th century showed that Antarctica has significant coal reserves, formed when the continent was once covered in lush forests under a much warmer climate. But coal is just the surface layer. As ground-penetrating radar and deep drilling technology advanced, scientists began uncovering signs of oil and natural gas. Some estimates suggest Antarctica's oil reserves could rival those of the Middle East, while its gas reserves could compete with Russia or Qatar. And it doesn't stop there. Antarctica is also believed to be rich in rare minerals, iron, copper, gold, uranium, and even rare earth elements, the heartbeat of modern technology. These metals are essential for batteries, phones, computers, and especially advanced military hardware. In today's high-tech era, whoever controls those resources holds a strategic edge. But because of just how massive and sensitive that hidden fortune is, Antarctica was essentially locked away by the 1959 Antarctic Treaty and reinforced by the Madrid Protocol in 1991, which banned resource exploitation for at least 50 years. On paper, the reason was to protect the fragile environment. And yes, Antarctica's ecosystem is incredibly delicate, where even small disturbances can leave long-lasting scars. Yet, through the lens of geopolitics, it's hard to believe the world's superpowers would simply walk away from such treasure only for the sake of the environment. Analysts often say the Antarctic Treaty was really a way of freezing interests. Instead of rushing into a resource war, the superpowers agreed to put things on hold, preserving the status quo until the timing is right. In the meantime, they quietly carry out surveys, mapping the geology, locating oil fields and mineral deposits. When the moratorium finally expires, the nation with the most data will hold the upper hand. The clearest examples come from the 1970s and 1980s, when both the US and the Soviet Union carried out major geological surveys. Under the banner of science, they drilled deep to collect sediment samples, allowing them to estimate resource potential. Most of those detailed reports were never made public, but leaks hinted at massive numbers. More recently, China has invested heavily in Antarctic research stations, deploying underground surveying technology with very similar goals. It's this resource factor that makes it hard to see Antarctica as the pure continent of peace it's portrayed to be. Instead, it feels more like a giant vault packed with treasure, locked tight, with every superpower holding a spare key, waiting for the right moment to turn it. When the world faces an energy crisis, or when resource strategy becomes a matter of survival, opening that vault may only be a matter of time. And it's here that conspiracy theories find new fuel. If Antarctica truly holds that much wealth, then perhaps the restricted zones, no-fly corridors, and tight information control aren't just about protecting ancient secrets, but also about hiding geological data. Some even believe that small-scale experimental extraction has already taken place in secret, with results kept under wraps to avoid sparking international disputes. Resources, then, may be the most concrete piece of Antarctica's mystery. UFOs, hollow Earth theories, and ancient legends live in the haze of imagination. But oil, gas, and minerals, those can be measured, quantified, and fought over. And they may well be the clearest reason why, for decades, Antarctica has remained sealed off, guarded like an unopened treasure chest. If the vast resources hidden beneath Antarctica's ice are enough to keep nations cautious but never looking away, then another mystery lies in the very people who choose to set foot there. Not ordinary tourists, not even just scientists, but powerful figures and global icons, politicians, religious leaders, even astronauts. And every time one of them shows up, it sparks a wave of questions. What could possibly draw them to this barren, frozen land, a place with no cities, no permanent residents, and officially at least, nothing to see? One of the most talked about visits happened in 2016, when then U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry made a surprise trip to Antarctica on the very day of the U.S. presidential election. The timing alone fueled speculation. Why would one of the most powerful men in Washington fly to the farthest, emptiest corner of the world at such a critical moment? The official answer was climate change awareness, to witness its impact firsthand. But skeptics argued that there were plenty of other places far more urgent for such a visit. The silence around his itinerary and the fact that many details were never released has left Carey's trip shrouded in mystery. Years before that, Antarctica also welcomed another unexpected guest, Pope John Paul II. His presence on the White Continent was described as a symbolic gesture of peace. But like all symbols, it could be read in many ways. Some say the Pope wanted to see the Earth's untouched wilderness as living proof of God's creation. Others whispered that the visit was a way to stake a spiritual claim in a land already dominated by political and scientific powers. From a religious perspective, Antarctica could be seen as the final symbol of purity, or perhaps a place tied to theological secrets never made public. Adding to the intrigue was Buzz Aldrin, the legendary astronaut, the second man to walk on the moon. Aldrin traveled to Antarctica only to leave suddenly due to health issues. What made the trip stranger was a cryptic message he posted and later deleted: "We are all in danger. It is pure evil." No one knows exactly what he meant. But for a man who had gazed at Earth from space and stood on the moon, those words carried a chilling weight. Did he see something in Antarctica that the rest of the world will never be told? And it doesn't end there. Over the years, politicians, billionaires, and military leaders have all made sudden, secretive visits. Their schedules are often rushed, their reasons rarely shared. Many believe these visits are about inspecting classified discoveries, anything from giant fossils to strange geological formations beneath the ice. Others go further, suggesting that Antarctica now serves as a kind of closed-door meeting room for the global elite, a place remote enough for conversations the rest of the world must never hear. What these powerful figures reveal simply by showing up is that Antarctica is not empty. Far from it. It seems to hold layers of meaning, political, scientific, religious, and perhaps even something beyond imagination. The real question is not just what did they see there, but why did they all choose silence after coming back? And sometimes, silence speaks louder than any explanation ever could. That silence has transformed Antarctica into a breeding ground for endless theories. Could there be remnants of a lost civilization under the ice? Or advanced technology buried so deep humanity isn't ready to face it? Or more simply, is it just a vault of strategic resources, secrets that, if revealed too soon, might shake the balance of world power? Throughout Antarctica's history, one theme has always run alongside its expeditions, its scientific discoveries, and its many strange theories: the control of information. No other place on Earth is celebrated as the common heritage of humankind, while at the same time wrapped in such strict layers of censorship. Every piece of data released, every map published, every satellite image downloaded seems to have passed through an invisible filter. And it is that control which has turned Antarctica into something unique, a place where power and secrecy walk hand in hand. Since the 1950s, when the Antarctic Treaty was signed, the participating nations have publicly pledged to dedicate the continent to peace and science. Yet alongside that pledge, they built walls of legal barriers. Every bit of research, every set of data must flow through official channels. No one has the right to publish or investigate independently. The result is that science in Antarctica stopped being about free knowledge and instead became a tool of diplomacy, where each piece of information carries political weight. For the public, this control shows itself in more subtle ways. Satellite photos are often blurred in specific regions. Maps released to the public usually detail only the most accessible areas, leaving large blanks where questions linger. Scientific reports are rarely released in full, instead, they highlight only safe findings for journals. Raw radar scans or deep core drilling data, the kind that could reveal what really lies beneath the ice, almost never see the light of day. The deeper you look, the clearer it becomes that this is not just about basic security, it's about power. Because whoever controls the information controls reality itself. When a major power declares that Antarctica is nothing but ice and microbes, that narrative becomes the official truth, even if locked away in restricted databases are findings that tell a very different story. The gap between the truth we're told and the truth kept hidden is exactly where power thrives. And that's why Antarctica has always been fertile ground for conspiracy theories. The more that's hidden, the more imagination rushes in to fill the void. A blurred satellite image isn't seen as a glitch, it's seen as a secret base. An expedition gone missing isn't chalked up to a snowstorm, it becomes outside interference. Ironically, the very act of controlling information has only fueled the survival of these theories. Perhaps Antarctica stands as proof of a deeper paradox. Sometimes the real secret isn't what exists, but the fact that we are not allowed to know. A single piece of censored data may be important, but what matters more is the message it sends: there's something you're not meant to see. And it is that message, more than the hidden fact itself, that ignites curiosity, suspicion, and the endless myths surrounding this land of ice. Power here doesn't just lie in drilling resources or building bases, it lies in controlling the line between what is revealed and what is concealed. And Antarctica, with all its ice layered over by politics, has become the perfect example of how power and secrecy intertwine. But this isn't only a product of the 20th or 21st century. If we look further back to old maps and ancient myths, Antarctica has always been more imagined than explored. Perhaps that is its true nature, to exist in the tension between what we can see and what we are never allowed to see. And that is why it continues to hold our fascination, forcing humanity to keep asking questions long after the answers have been sealed away. If information control is the curtain that hides Antarctica today, then behind that curtain lies a future that may explode into conflict, the battle for energy. In a world that grows hungrier for resources every year, where oil fields, gas reserves, and rare minerals have become strategic bargaining chips, Antarctica, with its vast frozen wealth, cannot remain untouched forever. Geological surveys from the 20th century already hinted that beneath layers of ice miles thick lie sediment records stretching back hundreds of millions of years. Those sediments are telltale signs of coal, oil, and natural gas. Some unofficial estimates have even compared Antarctica's potential reserves to the Middle East, a bold claim, but not entirely unfounded. As radar technology has improved and can now peer deeper through the ice, the continent's underground resource map grows clearer. The question is no longer if the resources exist, but when and who will tap into them first. For now, the Antarctic Treaty and the Madrid Protocol have frozen all exploitation. But those agreements are only temporary. When the world enters a full-blown energy crisis, when traditional oil fields run dry, the debate won't be should we drill or not, it will be which nation gets to drill first. A silent race is already underway, not with weapons, but with data and science. Whoever holds the most detailed maps of oil and gas reserves, whoever perfects the technology to drill and transport in such extreme conditions, will dominate the game the moment the ban expires. And this energy struggle goes far beyond oil and gas. Antarctica is believed to hold rich deposits of rare minerals, cobalt, lithium, and rare earth elements, the building blocks of batteries, renewable energy, and modern weapons. In an age where green energy is hailed as salvation, whoever controls these rare materials will control the direction of global industry. The world can talk about solar, wind, and hydrogen power all it wants, but every one of those technologies still depends on scarce minerals. And Antarctica could very well be the last great untouched mine. That's why many warn Antarctica could become the new Middle East, only more dangerous. Because exploitation here wouldn't just risk geopolitical conflict, it could unleash an environmental catastrophe. Every drill hole, every pipeline could disrupt the delicate balance of its ecosystem. And once the ice begins to collapse, the damage wouldn't stay local, it would ripple out to sea levels, climate systems, and the survival of millions worldwide. And yet, this is exactly why Antarctica may become the front line where power and morality collide. Great powers could invoke global energy relief as justification for drilling. They might frame it as a solution to fuel shortages, food crises, or even climate change itself. At the same time, environmental organizations will push back, warning that exploiting Antarctica would be like opening Pandora's box, unleashing consequences that can never be reversed. This is where the true weight of Antarctica becomes clear. It is not just a remote continent, it could be the place where humanity's future is decided. Once its resources become a prize, Antarctica will no longer be the continent of peace, but a global chessboard. The coming energy war may not begin with bullets, but with treaties, with technology, and with how convincingly each side can tell its story to the public. Whoever controls the narrative of extraction for the good of humanity will be the one to win. And so, Antarctica is not only Earth's memory sealed in ancient ice, it may also be Earth's future. The real question is, when humanity finally unlocks that frozen vault, will we find salvation? Or will we trigger yet another cycle of ambition, conflict, and environmental ruin? If we imagine Antarctica as a land draped in mystery, then it is as if three hands are gripping the curtain tightly: science, the military, and religion. Three realms that seem different, even opposed, yet converge at the southernmost edge of the planet. Each holds a part of the key, and together they form a triangle of power that both protects and seals away the deepest secrets of Antarctica. Science, at least on the surface, is the light that illuminates this frozen continent. Research stations were built, and thousands of scientists from across the world take turns studying its climate, biology, and geology. But science in Antarctica is not entirely free. It is structured, allocated, and monitored through international treaties. Every discovery must be reported through official channels, and only fragments of information reach the public. Ground-penetrating radar data, core samples drilled deep beneath the ice, these rarely appear in their entirety. Science, instead of flinging open the doors to hidden truths, has become a filter, showing humanity only what is meant to be seen. If science is the mask, then the military is the steel beneath it. Since the Cold War, Antarctica has been under constant watch. Military bases disguised as research stations, restricted flight paths, censored areas on maps, all suggest the quiet presence of armed forces. Operations such as High Jump, along with rumors of Nazi underground bases, reinforced the belief that Antarctica has always been on the strategic radar of the superpowers. Officially, international treaties forbid the deployment of weapons here, but few truly believe the military has withdrawn from such a geographically crucial land, one that sits at the junction of three oceans, directly beneath the web of global surveillance satellites. The third point of the triangle, religion, may sound unexpected, but its influence is undeniable. From the Pope's symbolic visit to theological interpretations of Antarctica as the last pure land, religion has shaped how the public imagines this place. Some theologians see Antarctica as a symbol of the beginning or the end, where cosmic mysteries may be preserved. And at times, the voice of faith has helped legitimize silence. When science and politics cannot explain, myth and belief step in to fill the void. Thus, the triangle of science, military, and religion does more than coexist, it sustains itself by both supporting and restraining one another. Science provides the rational framework that makes control acceptable. The military ensures that the land stays firmly under watch. And religion cultivates a layer of myth, making Antarctica not just a physical continent but also a spiritual emblem beyond reach. Together, these three sharpened points don't simply maintain secrecy, they make secrecy durable. For the secret does not rest in the hands of any single group, but in the quiet collaboration of many powers. Viewed through this triangle of power, Antarctica's hidden truths are not merely about oil reserves or subglacial lakes. What is concealed is the very power to shape human knowledge. Whoever can define what Antarctica is, a land of ice, a vault of resources, or a mirror of the cosmos, holds the power to define how humanity sees the Earth itself. Throughout history, Antarctica has stood like a giant mirror of ice, reflecting humanity's deepest obsessions. Since ancient times, when Greek and Chinese geographers first imagined a terra australis incognita, an unknown southern land, this place was given meanings far beyond geography. It was the belief that Earth required balance, a symmetrical land in the south. It was the mythical realm where gods or strange peoples might dwell. Even before it was discovered, Antarctica was already a symbol of the unknown, of both humanity's hunger for knowledge and its fear of the blank spaces on the map. When the age of exploration arrived, Antarctica mirrored another obsession, the ambition to conquer. The race between Amundsen and Scott, the sacrifices on Shackleton's expeditions, all became proof of mankind's desire to prove its power against nature's harshest face. Yet those tragedies also reminded us of our fragility. No matter how advanced, humans remain fragile against endless snow and bone-crushing winds. Antarctica whispered back with icy calm, "We were never the absolute masters of Earth." In the 20th century, as the shadow of war spread, Antarctica reflected a different obsession: power and control. Covert military operations, restricted air zones, rumors of hidden bases, all turned it into a strategic playing card. The Antarctic Treaty of 1959 declared it a land for peace and science, yet at the same time, it transformed Antarctica into an out-of-reach zone, a place where information was filtered, and silence itself became a display of power. Even at the farthest edge of the Earth, humanity could not resist turning the southern pole into a political chessboard, despite the fact that no single nation truly owned it. Today, Antarctica has become a mirror for a global fear: survival. As ice sheets crack, as sea levels rise, the world looks to Antarctica not with curiosity alone, but with dread. Each collapsing glacier, each hidden river revealed beneath the ice, rings like a warning bell. Antarctica no longer just preserves the memory of Earth's past, it has become a countdown clock for humanity's future. And above all, Antarctica reflects the limits of our knowledge. After centuries of study, we have only scratched the surface. Beneath miles of ice lies an untouched world, lakes sealed off for millions of years, microbes found nowhere else, geological structures that could rewrite Earth's story. Every discovery opens another question, as though Antarctica always stays one step ahead of human imagination. But Antarctica's secrets are not just natural, they also lie in how we deal with truth. Science illuminates part of it and hides part of it. The military guards and protects, but also restricts. Religion gives it meaning, but also legitimizes silence. This triangle of power makes Antarctica a place where truth, belief, and authority weave tightly together, impossible to separate. Perhaps this is why Antarctica is more than a continent. It is the last symbol of the unknowable on Earth. If there is any place left that humanity cannot fully conquer, it is Antarctica, a land both near, charted on maps and watched by satellites, and yet distant, as unreachable as another planet. A land described in scientific detail, yet still wrapped in fog, secrecy, and myth. And maybe what Antarctica teaches us is not what lies beneath the ice, but how we face the unknown. It reminds us that humanity has limits, that not every secret is meant to be uncovered. And sometimes, silence itself holds value. Antarctica is not only Earth's treasure chest, but also Earth's lesson, a lesson in humility, in limits, and in the price of ambition. As we end this journey, perhaps we still have no definitive answers. But maybe that is the point. The absence of answers is what makes Antarctica the ultimate mystery. It does not hand us truths, it gives us questions. It does not fill the silence, it forces us to reflect. In a noisy world, Antarctica remains silent. And perhaps that silence is the most powerful message it has for humanity. Antarctica, the Earth's final secret, still waits for us, not to conquer, but to listen, to reflect, and to accept that not everything belongs to humankind.